Hello everyone and welcome back to my Nintendo Power series of videos. One thing I want to note before we go on to, like I said, we're going to talk about Volume 81, where things get quite a bit different, is that if we look at my notes over here for Volume 97, we'll notice I forgot to mention that Volume 75, it actually didn't have any of those comics in it. So, I mean, there's like no Howard and Nestor at this point, no Super Mario World, no Zelda comics. Back a while ago, when I was just reading through them for fun, I came across the issue where it actually says this is going to be the last issue for comics. I'm pretty sure it ended off with the Star Fox comic too, but unfortunately, I can't remember which issue that was. But anyway, I mean, I pointed it out, so I mean, that's the main thing I want to do, so at least I remember to go back and do that. But anyway, moving on, we are now going to be talking about issue number 81. Now, the first thing that we need to note about this issue actually isn't even inside, it's on the outside. First of all, things are a bit different as far as this goes. I mean, the top's a bit different. Well, not really. But the main thing that I want to note is the size difference. You can kind of see a bit of issue 75 in the back. So yeah, the issues did get smaller, and also, for about issues number 80 to about 90, they for some reason took away the side. So, I mean, it doesn't tell you what volume it is. So, I mean, when you line them all up nicely on your shelf, it's nice to be able to see what volume you're pulling out. But then for some reason, for like 80 to 90, they completely took that away. So I'm not sure why they bothered with that, but they did, for whatever reason. So, I mean, yeah, so this is where things kind of really started to get different. And, like, even not just the outside, where it gets a bit shorter, and even a bit thinner, too, or maybe that's just because of the illusion of it. It doesn't have like the nice end. But the inside looks quite a bit different. Now, if we go to page 6, Player's Pulse, not too different. Things are starting to look a bit cleaner, although luckily you still have that art down at the bottom, down there, always the wrong hand, which is still really cool. If we move on to like page 18, we are going to see what still makes Nintendo Power great, and that is the games where they talk about them. They do a bit of a review, and you also get all the maps and stuff that you always loved that helped you get through your games and stuff like that. Because, I mean, that's one of the things that I always really loved about Nintendo Power, is looking through those maps and seeing where different things were and stuff like that, and seeing where they kind of pinpointed things like the number 3 there and stuff like that. They kind of pinpoint, like, this section has this and stuff like that. I always really enjoyed reading through things like that. So, even at this point of the game, issue number 81, in what year? This is February 1996. They still had things like that, so we're almost a whole 10 years after the first issue we looked at. Let's see. Moving on to page 44. This is really different. We have classified information. Now, one thing to note about sort of the series of Nintendo Powers we're talking about now, it happened right around issue 81. I don't think issue 81 was the first issue to be like this. But things got a lot darker. I mean, the outsides of the magazines looked a lot darker. The table of contents and stuff looked darker. I mean, this one's just like Killer Instincts. I mean, of course it's going to be dark, but I mean, everything, it just feels like Nintendo Power, it was really bright and happy. And like fun and stuff back in like the earlier issues. And now for some reason, they're going for this like much darker tone and stuff like that. I'm not entirely sure why they did that, but anyway, if I can find what page we're on. But I mean, one thing that definitely shows that, you go from like the what's it called, beigeish background to this really dark classified information section. But I mean, even back in these days, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64 and stuff, games still had cheat codes and stuff, so it was still a lot of fun to read through classified information and stuff like that. Let's see, move on to page 54. Still have those really fun reviews, although it's still really dark background and stuff like that. You have Donkey Kong Country 2 and a whole bunch of tips for that. As well as a really cool pull-out kind of helping thing with, on the other side, a Ken Griffey Jr. baseball poster, which is pretty neat. Page 55, we have Epic Center, which hasn't really changed much since the last time we looked at it, since it's still a pretty new thing. It didn't really deserve a change yet, although, as I just showed there, it was talking about a Japanese RPG that was not yet released in North America. Over here, you still have Counselor's Corner, although as you know, it's like the font and everything, it got really freaky. I mean, everything got darker, started using these like really crazy fonts and stuff like that. Not really sure why they saw the need to kind of redesigned it. I mean, the Nintendo 64 was coming out around this time. I mean, you had all these great consoles, then you kind of went for this like really dark gray 64. So maybe they're kind of trying to change the tone of the magazine to match that. I have no idea. But anyway, so Counselor's Corner is pretty much still there. And on page 90, we of course still have Arena, with some of its cool things like that too. Like down here, it's like Beat World 6, so I'm getting 100% on all levels and stuff like that. So that's pretty neat. And then on 92, we of course have Pack Watch. So I mean, basically, the sections haven't really changed at all since the last time we looked at it. But overall, the inside and outside really have, with the shorter, different different spine, and the overall just the really like darker tone that the magazine took. Aside from like the nice, bright, vibrant colors and stuff that you saw in the other issues, now it's really kind of dark and scary. Let's see. Anyway, moving on. Kind of need to rearrange what I'm doing here. Got that there, that there. We are going to move on to issue number 116. Now, luckily, by this point, they had brought back the good spines. Also, at this point, they did this thing where they each kind of part of the spine has a part of a whole picture on it. Now, this one, it's not really a good example. It just has like this little bit of grass at the bottom, which doesn't really mean too much. And as you'll see in other issues we look at, there's actually a lot of better things on the side, and they do make a nice picture when you put them together. Also, notice just how big these magazines are at this point. I mean, right here, we're at 138 pages. Compare the length of some of the older issues to some of the newer ones when we get to them. Anyway, we're not going to spend very long on issue 166. There's just a few main things I wanted to point out. One of them was how the spine is better now. One of them was the length. Page 10, Player's Pulse, still has the pictures and stuff all around the side, which I really enjoy, seeing the art and stuff that people submit. And I want to point out page 58 for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. And page 58, classified information still looks the same, so they haven't changed that yet. Magazine still has a bit of a darker tone to it. Although the last thing I want to show is in the far back here, and that was this cool comic that, this issue came with. Now, they took comics out of kind of like the main magazine, although every once in a while they still put kind of like a neat little separate thing here that you could tear out. I'm not going to tear that one out. I do actually have a separate separate one here. Now, this is volume 6 of Pokemon, of this kind of Pokemon comic. There was, of course, volumes 1 to 5. I believe this is the last one. But yeah, it's when you open it up, you get a bit of a guide for part of the game, and then also you get a comic based on the TV show. It's obviously just like screen caps from the show kind of put together and then made into a comic, but it's still really cool. I mean, you have a 138-page magazine plus a really cool comic like this. I mean, it was just really neat. I mean, there's so much to read and stuff, and then you get bonus things like this. It's overall just really cool. So moving on from volume 116, this is where things are going to start to get a lot different. Those last few were kind of a bit the same, but I believe things here, yeah, this is where finally get into the cool stuff. Volume 128, we have Mario Party 2 on the front, and of course the spine is still good, and you can kind of see it right there. It's a bit of Lugia's wing on the sides. I mean, they look terrible when you just look at the sides alone, although when you put them together they actually do look neat when they make the picture. So yeah, basically by this point, things have become a lot brighter again. The kind of darker tone of the magazine was taken away, and things are a lot more colorful and fun. This was also the first issue of the year 2000, so for whatever reason, all of the page numbers begin with 2000. I'm not entirely sure why they did that. I guess just for fun. But yeah, everything starts with the 2000. So if I say now on page like 2000 something, you know why. It's not like the magazine's so long. It's actually 2,000 pages long. That'd be really cool, though. Well, I'd love to have an old issue of Nintendo Power that was that long. That'd be fun to read. But let's see. On 2010, we have Player's Pulse. Now, of course, I mean, I'm keep showing you almost the same thing, but I just want to show you kind of how it evolves over time. So you can see that by volume 128, it's still pretty much the same layout in a few of the other ones. They're still showing people's envelopes and stuff like that around it, which is really neat. I'm going to skip ahead to page 2044. And we wanted to see, we still have those maps and stuff, which is really cool. Back then, people would buy like the Nintendo Power, not just to find out about new games, not just to read reviews and stuff, but also because of the cool strategies and maps that they always provided. So yeah, just pointing that out to show that they're still doing that. Let's see, over here on page 2060, we have classified information. Now, just another point to prove that, I mean, it's become brighter again and it's not so dark. Classified information got a complete makeover once again, has a much brighter background this time, and still, all those cool codes and stuff like button combinations and stuff like that to unlock secret characters or new modes. Those are the kinds of things you love to see in Nintendo Powers. None of your friends would ever know about them, and you'd have this, and you'd have all the advantage, which is just really cool. Moving on from that, page 2078, we have Poké Center. Now this is a new feature that just recently started, like around this time, and that is a whole kind of section of the magazine dedicated to all things Pokemon. So like new Pokemon games that were coming out, talking about Pokemon things that were only out in Japan, talking about the show, Pokemon merchandise, everything you could think of. It's like down here, kind of that Pokemon sticker maker thing. Talking about one of my favorite Pokemon games over here. Pokemon trading card game. We've got Imakuni down there, that really crazy guy. Pokemon art that people drew on the side there. Talking about a whole bunch of different things like Pokemon's strengths and weaknesses and Pokemon Coliseum. There's always an Ask the Professor kind of section where it was kind of like Counselor's Corner, but it was only for Pokemon, so it would kind of go over how to do some difficult things in Pokemon. Like, is it possible to slow down the 0-1, which was the machine that you drove in Pokemon Snap? Where is Scyther hiding in Pokemon Snap? Where can I find Farfetch'd in Pokemon Yellow? So things like that. So it was always really neat to read through that. Plus, once again, we have, even though it's like not a comic in the actual magazine, kind of a pull-out one. And this is also one from the show, based on the show, which is pretty neat. This one is episode 12. So, I mean, I guess I was wrong. It didn't end at 6. Or is this actually a completely different set? I mean, that would make a lot of sense. Although it's actually not. I guess they took a break then, because I mean, if number 6 was in 116, why is number 12 in 120? I mean, I guess they took a break at some point, so it kind of threw me off. But anyway, I mean, it's just so neat to still see all the Pokemon and stuff they talk about. And Poké Center was always a really cool section back in the day, back when Pokemon was kind of in its prime. I mean, it's still a really popular thing today, of course, but I mean, I was a lot more into it back in the day, I have to admit. Obviously, man, come home from school every day, watch the show, the games were still new. It was a lot of fun. Good memories there. Let's see what else we got. So comic on page 82. Page 84, we have Counselor's Corner. Went through a bit of a make-through, but it still exists. Still answers all your questions about where do you find the Stone of Thirst in Shadowgate 64, or where do you find Floyd in Jet Force Gemini. All of your most asked questions answered right there. Page 2098, contests. Of course, like I said, something that always stuck around with Nintendo Power was the contests. And they always had really awesome prizes, always pointing at the wrong side. Stuff like that, all those Pokemon cards and stuff like that. I would have loved to have won that back in the day. Just so neat. And whoever owned these, whatever it's called, didn't enter them. These are not all of some of the ones I show. They're not all going to be my issues of Nintendo Power. I subscribed at about the beginning of the GameCube era, and then stopped subscribing not too long after the Wii came out. So basically all the ones you see right now, I picked them up later on, and they weren't part of my subscription, although you will see ones from my subscription later on too. But anyway, so the contests are still really cool. And also another new section which we are going to see, actually, sorry, actually I believe this is new. I don't believe we talked about this section in another issue. No, I don't believe we did. Is the Now Playing section, where they give ratings to all of the new games. So, I mean, it's really kind of funny seeing, like, Nintendo rate games for their own consoles. I mean, it'd be really weird to see them rate a game really low. I mean, I guess it was really bad. I mean, obviously there's probably a bit of bias in places. But, I mean, they rate everything like play control, even, like, other people give it ratings, and they give an overall rating, which is really neat. So, I mean, that's kind of a neat way to kind of figure out if you want to buy a game or not. Because, I mean, I don't think there was really any sections in the issues before it that kind of gave things a solid rating. I mean, it gave it reviews, but there wasn't kind of like a rating out of 10 to help you decide if it was good or not. And then at the very end here, we still have, of course, Pack Watch. Because, I mean, obviously, people want to see what's coming out in the future. And still really cool to look through. And, of course, have like Wario, Land 3 and stuff like that. I don't know what issue it was in, but there was even like a whole page about like Conker's Quest, which eventually became Conker's Bad Fur Day. But I mean, it talks about how it's like a nice, happy game, Conker on this nice, non-violent quest and stuff like that. And then it's funny to kind of see what the game was going to be like, and then what it became later on. So I mean, it's always fun to kind of find things like that. What's it called? In old Nintendo Power issues. And then here at the end, you get to see some of the suggested prices for things. New Super Nintendo, $39. I'll buy that. And then it says NES, call for price moves. I mean, I guess no one really carried NESs back then at that point. Let's see, 17 minutes in. We have just a few more issues to go. So let's see here. Alright, I just needed to fix something down there. Alright, let's see. So, 3 issues. No, there's actually 4 more issues to go. So anyway, moving on to issue number 167. So we're jumping from 128 to 167, and we're going to see what kinds of differences we have in here. This one right here, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. So that's really cool. And the first thing we are going to open up to is the table of contents. So right off the bat, you're going to see table of contents has obviously changed a lot since it has from kind of when we looked at things first. It's a lot more plain now and kind of professional looking. Not as fun as it used to be, but I mean, Nintendo Power was still a lot of fun to read at this point. One of the things I really love about issues of Nintendo Power around this time is Player's Pulse is just so cool. Now, it's not just the envelopes and stuff like that. People would just draw pictures and send them in. And they'd put them all around the sides and stuff like that. And I mean, there's even more that they had to put them on the next page, too. I mean, I just love looking at all that art. I thought it made Player's Pulse look so cool. I mean, and you get to read the letters and stuff, too. Just a lot of fun to read through overall. I really love the pictures and stuff like that. I always really like that. Let's see. So you still have the power charts here. Not the same as like the top 10 and stuff anymore, or the top 20s and 30s, but it still shows you what kind of games were really popular back around that time. So now, what we have, it's interesting, because so Pack Watch was always kind of shoved at the back of the magazine, but now it's been moved to the front, and it's been changed from Pack Watch to Game Watch, because I mean, obviously, GameCube didn't use cartridges or packs anymore, game packs, so they changed the name to Game Watch, and that goes in depth on a whole bunch of the games that are coming out. It also gives a massive list of a whole bunch of the different things that are coming out. So I mean, unlike back in like one of the first issues we looked at, where it listed like 5 games that it knew were coming out in the future for each console, now you have the internet and stuff like that. People announcing things a lot more openly. So the Game Watch forecast was a lot more complete. Let's see. Moving on to page 28, we have Power On, and one part of that was the screen test, and it would give you a picture from a Nintendo game, and it would ask you to make kind of like the funniest caption that you possibly could for it. So we have a picture from Wind Waker right there, and it says, "Hey, wait up, want to trade?" As you see, there's the girl there carrying a pot, and Link's stuck carrying that massive pig. So then people would pretty much send in what they thought would be funny, and then you could have it featured in the next issue over here, where it shows the last one and some funny things that people made up for it. And then down here at the bottom, just kind of a funny little thing. I loved it when Nintendo Power was always really funny and clever, and they'd have funny little sections like this. And it's the top 10 brilliant but unapproved uses for your Game Boy Advance SP. I'm not going to read them all, but I mean, like number 5, refrigerator magnet. Although unfortunately, as we discovered, the Game Boy Advance SP isn't magnetic. So I mean, how is that a use for your Game Boy Advance? It's just so silly. Or number 3, moth attractor. The downside is that it'll attract moths. I mean, it's just so silly. I mean, just silly things like that are always funny to read. I don't know. Maybe I'm too easily amused. I probably am. Right here, we have Nintendo Online. Now, obviously, I mean, man, this is around the time when everyone had the internet. So they talked about their website and, like, some of the cool features and stuff on it. And you could check out, like, the Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire website or the Link's Awakening website and get all this extra information on all the games, which was really cool. And you can even talk to people from Nintendo Power in, like, the chat rooms and forums and stuff like that. I mean, man, who remembers Nintendo Insider forums? I miss that place. But you have, like, the different, like, times you could talk to all the different people in the chat room. Really, really cool stuff. Unfortunately, I don't really know if they did it later on. Anyway, let's see. So 30, Nintendo Online. 32. Yes, 32. You still have the guides. You have the cool inside look at the game. But you also get all the maps and stuff like that. And all, like, you still have all that art down at the bottom, too, and stuff, which is really cool to look through. Because, I mean, as you noticed, obviously back in, like, the first issue, when I was showing, see if I can get that really quickly, like right here. One thing I haven't really been mentioning too much, but you'll notice, I mean, the art's slowly been fading away. I mean, all the characters and stuff that they place all over the place, that's slowly been fading out, and things are becoming a bit cleaner. But you still have things that are, like, around the sides and stuff that are really fun to look at, luckily. I mean, it's still a lot of fun to read and stuff like that. But keep that in mind as we go on to even more of the later issues and stuff like that. But yeah, they still have the guides. Page 52, what will we find on page 52? We will find Wind Waker Guide, the greatest Zelda game ever made. I think so. Even though this game was 3D, I mean, you still have maps and stuff of the different dungeons and places that you go. It's just so cool. I love it. Moving on, next thing that we're going to talk about is... Actually, before I get to that, one thing I always remember, they did it for a little while, was fundamentals, and they kind of talked about how to make a basic game and stuff like that, how to program a basic game. It was kind of interesting. I never really got to try any of it out, because, I mean, at this time, I actually didn't have a computer still, I'm pretty sure. Man, like, what year was this? Like I said, I got a computer in 2004. I think I got a computer right around this time. This issue is from April 2003. So, yeah, I still didn't have a computer, but it was kind of cool. It's kind of, for people who were willing to go explore, it kind of gave you a chance to make your own game, which is kind of neat. Kind of a Pac-Man ripoff, but still cool. Next thing you notice, classified information. Once again, looks a bit different. This time, for some reason, the first page, they made it black, but then after on, classified information, the pages stayed with a white background for whatever reason. Not really sure why they did that. But still, you still have games with all these cheat codes and stuff like that you can enter. And you can smash your elbow on the table. But I mean, it was still just so much fun back then to be able to open up Nintendo Power, turn to it, and see if there was any games you were playing and if there was any cheat codes for them. I always loved doing that. Anyway, let's see. Interesting thing to note, this is actually about the time I had my, my subscription. So like I said, kind of the beginning of the Nintendo Power phase. Sorry, not Nintendo Power phase, the GameCube phase. Plus, I didn't have a computer back at this time. So that's when I had my subscription, back in that time when I could really use it. Let's see, moving on, skipping ahead quite a bit. We're going to page 124 where we see they still have Arena. They still want you to take screen caps of the games you're playing and send them in and see if you are one of the coolest guys. And on page 132, we have Now Playing, although it's a bit different because instead of giving actual numerical ratings, they had different people playing the games, and they would each give it like a star rating. So of course, Wind Waker, being the best Zelda game ever, got 5s from everyone, or so yeah, 5s. I was gonna say 10, because there can be half stars, but then I mean I would just call it like 4.5 or something like that. Sims got all 4s. Golden Sun Lost Age got almost all 5s and stuff like that. So I mean, it was pretty fun back then still to be able to read through and see what kind of ratings games that you were interested in picking up got. And then for whatever reason, it showed what kind of genres the people who were rating the games liked most, I guess, so you could figure out if their rating was kind of accurate to what kind of game they were playing, or if they hated adventure games. So that's why they gave Zelda a negative 2 out of 200. I have no idea. But anyway, so that was issue number 167.